Hello everyone, Daim Shabazz here, and today I'm going to be covering chapters 13 and 14. Yes, two chapters. They are the same subject. Both chapters are called Global Marketing Communication Decision 1 and 2. And it's a very interesting chapter because it deals with or builds on many of the things that we've talked about in terms of branding overseas, and marketing activities. This will serve as the culmination of everything. We're only able to cover up to chapter 14. There are a couple of other chapters after that. And Global Marketing and the Digital Revolution is chapter 15. Strategic Elements of Competitive Advantage, that's probably more global strategy. And then finally, chapter 17 is leadership, organization, and corporate social responsibility. So those are the three chapters that we will not be able to get to, but I think we've done quite a bit this semester given the circumstances. And I will start talking about chapter 13, and hopefully you'll be prepared for Thursday's exam. That will be our last exam, and it will follow the format that we've been having for previous exams, where you'll have a set of multiple choice questions and probably a short answer question. So that's where we're going. But for tomorrow, we have a guest coming to our class, Omar Goff. I've talked to you about him many different times over the past couple of weeks. He is a company employee, company man. He's been with Procter & Gamble since he graduated from FAMU many years ago, and we will hear him talk about some of his projects, including the he had a project that he worked on in Brazil, and I bumped into him in the airport there. So it should be very interesting for him to tell us some of the exciting projects that he has worked on. Hopefully you are rounding out your projects. We have just one more week left, and then after that you can exhale and you can relax a bit. It's been a very tough semester. I do understand that, and hopefully by next week, we will be ready to wind things down in a very orderly way. So let me start talking about this material here. I'm going to go through these slides, and there are actually 44 slides in this chapter, but I have a lot that I want to show you because I believe that these slides have good information, but some of it is a bit outdated, and you'll find out when we get to certain parts that I'll pull in articles that will update some of the data. So let's start. IMC. You may have heard of this in Principles of Marketing. You may have heard it in your business communication class. You may have heard it in professional leadership development. You may have heard it in advertising. You may have heard it in another class that you've taken, or perhaps you heard of this concept in an internship that you did. But essentially, IMC is the idea that a company has to have a very fine-tuned marketing strategy, and it has to be integrated, meaning that if you have a marketing campaign, each of these platforms on which you will be marketing, such as TV, print ads, billboards, digital, mobile ads, such as on the sides of vehicles, on the top of taxi cabs, these all have to be integrated in a way that will ensure consistency and making sure that the brand is not eroded because you're having different messages on different platforms. Bear in mind that there is a difference between marketing using print ads and marketing digitally, or marketing using billboards. There are lots of differences, lots of pros and cons. And of course, you're talking about price points as well. But of course, in this, we're talking about integrating your marketing strategy. And that is exactly what IMC is to many companies across the world that use this platform to great effect. So what is global advertising? Advertising is any sponsored paid message that is communicated in a non-personal way. Now it says paid message, and I would like to add, while not totally disagreeing, I would also like to add that sometimes advertising is unpaid. As a matter of fact, sometimes people pay to advertise other companies' logos and their merchandise. Have you ever worn a t-shirt or some kind of a shirt with a company logo on it? Like Nike, that's a popular one. You have a lot of the pink paraphernalia for Victoria's Secret. You have other types of logos that you see people wearing across their chests. Believe it or not, that is advertising, but the irony is you have paid for that shirt. You pay for the shirt, but you are offering an advertising platform. You are basically a walking billboard, but that company should be paying you for wearing that shirt, but yet you have paid for that shirt and you're providing a platform for that company's brand and that company's products as well. So that's just kind of a sidebar on that. But we understand that advertising comes at many different levels. Single country level, which could be domestic, or it could be just one single country that you're doing business in, or it can be regional. If we're talking about the Caribbean, we're talking about Latin America, we're talking about East Africa, or we're talking about Western Europe, or we're talking about the Middle East, or any of these grouping of nations. Now, there is some caution that needs to be made when you're marketing products regionally or when you're advertising regionally, because there may be an assumption that countries, even though they're in the same region, may be similar. That may be true to a certain extent, but there are situations where you have a variety of different cultures while they're in the same region, and you have a number of different circumstances that may entail that you have to make some adaptations in a number of countries. Now, global advertising is a bit different because you're looking at standardizing your message and maybe adapting in certain circumstances. And there are a number of different examples, Coca-Cola being one major example of trying this global approach. And in fact, a couple of chapters ago, I showed you a video showing some of the different ads that Coca-Cola ran in different countries and how the approach was very different in terms of how they wanted to reach the consumer base. Now, recently we were talking about Starbucks, and I believe we had an article dealing with Starbucks in China. A journal article was presented, and I showed you a couple of articles. One was Starbucks in China, when at the time it represented the largest Starbucks in the world. But then I showed you some pictures of the Starbucks I visited in Chicago, which is now the world's largest. Right after China had claimed that honor, Chicago built the largest Starbucks in the world. But Starbucks started out as a small cafe in Seattle, Washington, and it began to branch out. And people were skeptical about the fact that people were paying so much for cups of coffee. And in class, you all talked about some of the flavors you liked and why it is that you would pay $4 for a cup of coffee. And but you're not alone because so many people have gotten into the Starbucks coffee culture, sitting around and enjoying a cup of coffee with your friends, or maybe you're studying and you decide to go to a Starbucks and grade papers like me, or you just want to relax and just blow some steam off and just be have some coffee and be off to yourself. And this is something that is has we have developed into this kind of tradition of drinking fancy coffee. And so they provided a number of different services. You can buy your bags of coffee, and certainly this trend has spread around the world. Irish pubs in the US, okay, we know that Ireland, they're famous for their pubs. British pubs, you always hear about people getting sloppy drunk in these places, having a great time. And of course, that model has been transferred here. And its pubs are associated with the tradition of Irish drinking and the drinking songs and all of these things that we hear about on St. Patrick's Day. And all the pubs are packed with singing and drinking and all kinds of revelry. German-style beer halls in Japan. Now, I forgot to mention, we talked about Starbucks in China. We realized that China is a tea-drinking country. But now you have this incursion of coffee drinking in China, which is now going to represent a very large revenue stream for Starbucks. Top 10 global marketers in terms of ad spending. This is as of 2016. Now, okay, it's 2021, so this is data are 5 years old. And I want to show you some updated, if I can find some updated information, I will. And I have via Google search, I have come across a couple of articles, but there's one with a bunch of graphs, and I'll just show this to you. And this has various metrics here. This is of digital ads. So you have Google. This is revenue, actually. This is ad sellers. And you see Google and Facebook at the top of the list there. But let's look at digital ad spending and how much, well, obviously in 2020 it has dropped because of the pandemic, but it's projected to increase to the middle of this year, only to tail off. But we can see the progression of digital ad spending here, and that's projected out to 2024. Now, if we talk about actual spending overall, I have another article that I found that is up to date. And the last slide we saw had Procter & Gamble being number one, and Samsung, Nestle, Unilever, L'Oreal, Volkswagen, Comcast, Anheuser-Busch, General Motors, and Daimler. Okay, so hold these companies in your head just for 1 second. This is 2019. And we can see that these names differ a bit from the slide that I just showed you. Here you have Amazon. Now, Amazon was not even in the top 10 in 2016. I'm looking at the slide over on my other monitor. You have Procter & Gamble, which was number 1. Now it's number 2. L'Oreal was number 5. Now it's number 3. It's a French company. Samsung was number 2. Now it's number 4. Slipped a couple of positions. Unilever was number 4. Now it's number 5. Comcast Corporation was not in the top 10. Now it's number 6. Nestle was number 3. Now it's number 7. Louis Vuitton was not in the top 10. Google Alphabet was not in the top 10, nor was AT&T. So this shows you, in a lot of these companies, we look at AT&T, we look at Google, we look at Comcast, we look at Samsung and Amazon. These are content delivery either providers or devices. We know that Samsung is known for producing a wide array of electronic devices and different products. And it is certainly one of those companies that has a very high profile. But all of these companies spend billions of dollars, as you can see, with Amazon spending $11 billion just on advertising. All right, so that gets us up to date in terms of ad spending. Now let's see if I have any other news here. Let me just show you this one. Global ad spending to shrink 9% in 2020, but digital bouncing back. There's a study released. So let me flip through this a bit. Advertising spending is due to decline 9.1% in 2020 due to COVID-19. Now, one of the graphs that I showed you in the ad, I showed you one of the articles, and you saw it trending downward, only then to rebound. And they talk about all the declines here. But then they talk about digital media, the trends going upward. So you have an upward trend for digital spending. And that's pretty obvious because of there's more activity on the digital platforms and people are buying products digitally, and they're ordering products to be delivered to their home and through the online platform. So it makes quite a bit of sense. Here's the big argument in marketing. When you talk about international business, when you talk about international marketing, global marketing, this is the question. Do you standardize or do you adapt? This is the $1 million question. So there have been a couple of debates over the years, and one such debate, as I pull this over, very famous debate, and it's actually on one of the following slides. Eric Ellender had conducted research on this idea of standardized advertising. And I'll just read a couple of paragraphs, the first two paragraphs. And this article came out in 1965. And it was one of the first articles to deal with this idea of standardized advertising. Now, as you can recall, you remember Theodore Levitt, right? We read Theodore Levitt. What was he famous for? He was famous for globalization of markets. So he was talking more globalization and standardization of products. He was more a proponent of standardizing products. Here, you're talking about standardizing advertising. So you have this whole idea. In one of the previous chapters, it talked about all the options you had. You can standardize your advertising and your product, right? That's one option. You can standardize your product and you can adapt your advertising. You can adapt your product, standardize your advertising, or you can adapt both, or you can create a new product. That's the fifth option. So with these two debates that came about with Theodore Levitt and Eric Ellender, we have this ongoing debate of whether you should standardize or adapt your, in this case, advertising. Must the specific advertising message and media strategy be changed from region to region or country to country? Think of cultural and legal issues. Saying that, I want to give you an idea of how challenging this can be. And I look at the very famous gaffe that Coca-Cola made in China. And it's world famous. Everybody knows of this gaffe or mistake, that when Coca-Cola ventured into China and they had this name, this very famous name with the calligraphy and the red background, white lettering. When they went into China, there was this idea that we're going to somehow translate this name Coca-Cola. And so on first attempt, this was the straight translation. It was a translation of the phonetic sounding of Coca-Cola. So it was Kiko-Kela, which was translated into bite the wax tadpole, which makes absolutely no sense. And so you see all these memes here. Bite the wax tadpole, I don't know what that's about, but it's very silly and they're making fun. They have all of these different memes here because it's a very famous and humorous case. So what Coca-Cola came up with this, they made an adjustment, and it's kind of similar to sounding to Coca-Cola, Kiko-Kela, and of course my Chinese is not very good, but they had a equivalent of happy mouth drink or may the mouth rejoice, which is another translation of the Chinese name equivalent of Coca-Cola. And there are many other mistakes that have been made. And so there are all these mistakes. If you look in the book, they have in some books they'll give you a whole list of these mistakes that were made by companies in terms of translation. So I want you to think of this. If you are a company, an American company, and you're going to China and you're trying to maintain your brand identity, but you're taking something in English which has 26 alphabets and a handful of sounds, and you're trying to translate something into Chinese, it's going to be a challenge because there are certain concepts in Chinese that don't exist in English. And so you'll run into these problems if you're not very careful. But there are an unlimited amount of references to Bite the Wax Tadpole. They even have Snopes, which is this site that you go to if you want to find out if something is true or not. And they actually give the story of what happened in terms of the, it says here, initial transliteration of its name into Chinese produced a rendering whose meaning was Bite the Wax Tadpole. And then they go and they give the actual story that that I showed you in the different graphics. And this was actually the name Coca-Cola in Chinese. And here they make references to the Nova case. They call it apocryphal, which means lacking authenticity, about Chevy Nova sales failure in Spanish-speaking countries are often cited as examples of the hubris of American companies who fail to take cultural differences specifically language used into account when marketing their products in foreign countries. Both examples are untrue, and in this case, the claim is especially egregious as few companies can match Coca-Cola's amazing history of successfully adapting their product and marketing techniques to meet the demands of a wide variety of global markets. You sometimes have to check behind Snopes because Snopes may also have these. Some of the details may not be conveyed correctly on their site. What are some of the difficulties that compromise an organization's communication efforts? They give 4. Message may not get through to the intended recipient. The message may reach the target market but may not be understood. This is one of the worst cases because you have the message, you're reaching the target market, but then the target market will say, I'm not sure what they're trying to tell me. I'm not sure if they're trying to inform me, make me laugh, shock me, or what. And you're totally confused by the message. What is that message? What is that commercial saying to me? And if that is the case, you're going to have a problem. Specifically, if you're marketing overseas and you're using humor and somebody doesn't understand the cultural humor, that happens as well. And of course, there can be disastrous consequences if that humor is taken to be an insult. Some of the other cases, the message may reach the target audience and may be understood, but may not induce the recipient to take action. What is the action that we're looking for? Remember in the previous chapter, and also in Principles of Marketing, you learned about the awareness. This is the decision-making process that you want to bring your consumer to make a purchase. So first is awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and then purchase. So you have these levels that you want to pull the consumer through in order to finally make that purchase. And then of course it varies depending on the type of media you use and the type of cultural sensitivities that you have in that country. And lastly, the effectiveness of the message can be impaired by noise. What do we mean by noise? Do we mean noise like the people that are cutting grass next door to my house? No, not that kind of noise. We're talking about noise in a sense that there is maybe something is a bit too busy. Maybe there's it's too much in what you're trying to convey, and that people can't understand what you're trying to say. Maybe you're using symbology, or you're using colors, or you're using iconography that might be distracting. So all kinds of noise that can cause the target not to understand your message. And again, this is a big debate that you always have, this question, standardization versus adaptation. So remember, Eric Ellender is the individual that talked about standardization of advertising. And as I show you this quote from Ellender, why should 3 artists in 3 different countries sit drawing the same electric iron and 3 copywriters write about what, after all, is largely the same copy for the same iron? And that was in the beginning of his article, where the article that was published in 1965. So here you're talking about pattern advertising, looking for maybe a compromise between 100% standardization and 100% adaptation. So since we're talking about Coca-Cola, we can use them as an example because their strategy may vary from country to country, but they have the same standard logo. In some countries, they have to put Coca-Cola in the local language. But for the most part, it is a globalized brand with very few changes. In a couple of chapters ago, we were talking about branding and also market entry. There was a video on Coca-Cola and some of their various commercials that they shoot in different countries, and how they kind of use humor, how they use celebrities, how they might use sexual overtones to make a point. These are all common tactics that are also used in the U.S. But it says here a basic pan-regional or global communication concept for which copy, artwork, and other elements can be adapted as required, keyword, for individual countries. Here they're showing you how they are actually swapping things out using a similar concept but making some changes. You know, one of the things in digital advertising that's very interesting, and you probably are familiar with this, but during political campaigns, they have a very advanced intelligence advertising, or advertising using almost like artificial intelligence, but it's based on intelligence gathering. In that, if someone goes to an ad, a page, a particular page, the ad that you will see will depend on your habits and the information that they have on you. So, for example, if you have a certain demographic profile, you have an ad server that says, well, based upon this profile, we're going to send them this ad. If you have another demographic profile, they'll send you another ad. If you have yet another demographic profile, they'll send you a different ad. So depending on who you are, your demographics, your psychographics, you may very well get a different ad from an ad server. Here, obviously, you have a lot of different advertising agencies, and I thought I had bookmarked the ad agencies, and I'll show you. It's actually on page 419. If you look at the ad agencies, this is again 2016. Okay, so I have found the 2020 largest advertising agencies worldwide by 2020. This is 2016, WPP of London, Omicron, you all may know Omicron, Omnicon, Publix Group from Paris, Interpublic Group, New York, Dentsu Tokyo, Accenture, PwC, IBM, Deloitte, and Havas. And you know several of these companies because they are actually partners of SBI. But let's look at 2020. Advertising industries, stats and trends. The big five advertising agencies consist of WPP, Omnicom, Publicis, the Interpublic Group of Companies, and Dentsu. Global ad spending was over $563 billion. North America is the region that invests most in the sector, followed by Asia and Western Europe. Social media advertising budgets have doubled worldwide from $16 billion in 2014 to $31 billion in 2016. So let's go down and see which are the top agencies and see how much they have changed. Well, we still have WPP, Omnicom, Publicis, Interpublic, and Dentsu. And pardon me if I'm mispronouncing these names. Hakahodu, Havas, Dentsu again, MDC Partners, Publicis, Sapient. So Sapient is a company name that I recognized. So there were actually a couple of advertising firms in Chicago that, and I believe one of them was one of my accounts that I had many years ago. And as I Google, in fact, these are all new. I don't recognize any of these, and bear in mind that was many years ago that I worked downtown Chicago, and some of these names may have even changed, to be honest. Yeah, all of these are different companies. These are I don't even recognize any of these company names, but I will show you. And again, this is just I was just trying to remember in Chicago what were the names of the companies. And yeah, these are all new. It just also shows you how quick these companies, these industries change. Now, you probably know about the ad company BBDO, which is actually it wasn't the company that I'm talking about in Chicago. That was one of my accounts, but it was one that we often obviously trying to get their attention to buy our computer equipment. And I'll just give you a quick look see. This is BBDO of Chicago, very large company. This is some of their ad campaigns that they've worked on. And of course, it is a global company, so they have clients overseas as well. Advertising is a very exciting industry to be in. But I will tell you that it is also high pressure. There are deadlines to meet. And if you think about the production chain, that you have a company, your client, that needs an ad done. They need an ad campaign done because they're rolling out a product. And that product is coming out, let's say in a month or 2 months. And they're looking to roll out this product and they need their advertising strategy in place. So, and I might be exaggerating when I say 2 months, but let's say it's 6 months. You're talking about rolling out a new product. So this ad agency needs that lead time to come up with the concept, to interview the client, and to ask them, the product managers, okay, what is it that you're trying to convey with this product? What is your brand personality? What is your target market? And then they will go and they will create this ad strategy for that company. But it is very high pressure because companies as clients are very particular about what they want. And so you go to several iterations and then you finally get this ad campaign done. And you may appreciate this if you watch a Super Bowl during halftime. You have all these ads and they're extremely well done. And some of them are likened to works of art. So let's move on and talk about this idea of advertising agency in the era of digital disruption. I actually saw an article that talked about the response, how these companies were responding to the digital onslaught of and how advertising has changed. And you may remember in one of the ads I showed you, it talked about the trend of digital expenditures, so that can give you an idea of just how prevalent this issue is with respect to this particular platform, and it was accelerated because of the COVID and everybody having to step up their digital game as far as a distribution channel. So this is selecting an advertising agency in the era of digital disruption. And of course, the advertising agency is going to depend on what it is that you're trying to advertise. But I do want to show you this piece here, companies moving to digital at scale. And I haven't read this, but I just want to just kind of scroll through and see what they're saying. A lot of vendors are starting to drop the term digital. It's kind of like in the 90s when everybody was talking about cyber, where they put an E in front of everything, e-marketing, e-business. And then people figured, okay, we no longer need the E, it's just business. It's just a way to do business. We're at a point in digital maturity where North American and European businesses accept the importance of technologies such as cloud, AI, and automation. They ran experiments on these technologies and validated that they work. Now businesses are moving to digital at scale. Let's look at what digital at scale means and why it is important. So I'm just going to scroll down and we might be able to pick out a few things here in terms of what the author is saying. The enterprises reported their top investment priority for 2020 is customer experience. That's the case not only if the economy strengthens, but even in the case of an economic downturn. And this has been true for a long time. I remember back in the early e-business days, it was a very strong debate on how do you recreate the in-person experience online. And there were all these different ways that people were talking about digitizing scent. They were talking about 3D. They were talking about virtual shopping. All of these things in trying to replicate the in-person experience. And when I said digital scent, I mean actually digitizing scent. To sample something online and you wanted to smell a sample of perfume, you can do that. So here are some of the things. Help drive innovation, improve service levels, reduce costs, execute more quickly on critical projects. So they go on, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but you kind of get an idea that companies find this to be a very critical component of their business model. Impact of digital revolution. We know about big data. Google and Facebook account for more than 3/4 of new online ad spending. I think we saw a graphic on that earlier. Global advertising. Creating global advertising. The message is at the heart of advertising. Again, you have this communication model. You have the sender of the message. You have the encoding. You have the message itself and the medium. You have the decoding, and you have the recipient of the message. And then you have, of course, noise can get in, and it can kind of inhibit the transfer of the message. So the message is at the heart of advertising. And of course, you have these very creative people that can come up with this big idea so that you can remember the ad. An ad is really no good unless you remember the big idea. So here you have a lot of different approaches. Rational approach. So obviously with pharmaceuticals is interesting because of obviously we're in the COVID era, and people are talking a lot about vaccines. They're talking a lot about therapeutics, and they're talking a lot about prophylactics in terms of face masks and all of these different things you can do to your body to inoculate it from the virus. And so most pharmaceutical companies come up with a very scientific presentation to kind of give you an idea of why this particular medicine works. And you notice in these ads, they show someone who is very dejected or maybe showing symptoms of their ailment, and then they explain what the pharmaceutical is, And then at the end, they show you that same person very happy, very relieved, living a normal life, or having an improved standard of living. And of course, that's the whole hook. And that is also not only the rational approach, but there's also emotional strings that they're pulling there, heartstrings, and that kind of reel you in to say, okay, that is something that I can use in my own life. Then you have the emotional approach. Humor, of course, varies from market to market. And those are usually very powerful because, of course, humor and these kind of mnemonics. When I mean mnemonics, I'm talking about things that help you to remember. Humor and jokes and these things that make you laugh are very powerful. Selling proposition, just saying, hey, this is why you need this product. A promise or claim that captures the reason for buying the product or benefit that ownership confers. Actually, every ad should have this, and you shouldn't have to guess at what the value proposition is. But here you have the actual behind the scenes, the people who work behind the scenes to make this happen, art directors, very, very creative, brilliant people who actually take the concept that you want and they bring it to life. They bring it to visual fruition. Art direction, the actual copy, the way it's going to appear, and then the copywriters in terms of the how it's going to play out in terms of the message that you're conveying. So you have the art directors that will choose the graphics and the pictures, the direction, how it's going to be presented, the copy, how it's going to be presented in the ad, and the actual writers of the copy. Obviously, we talked earlier about translation and some of the mistakes that can be made. Translate the original copy into target language with caution. Leave some or all copy elements in home country language. Here's some cultural considerations as I wind down. Images of female-male intimacy are in bad taste. In Japan, illegal in Saudi Arabia. Wedding rings are worn on the right hand in Spain, Denmark, Holland, and Germany. European men kiss the hands of married women only, not single women. In Germany, France, and Japan, a man enters a door before a woman. No ladies first. American celebrities like Brad Pitt and Arnold Schwarzenegger are seen as pitchmen in Japan, but not in the US. Very interesting. Here are some of the mistakes, ad copy mistakes, and how they can be mistranslated. This one is very interesting on McDonald's. Does not use multiples of 4 in advertising prices. In China, 4 sounds like the word death. So make sure you don't use 4 in China because it can be construed as something negative. Here's some other cultural considerations. And here's the key point here, which medium or media you should use. Print such as daily and weekly newspapers. Of course, in this society, people are not using print media as much as they once did. So you have a proliferation of electronic media like TV, cable, radio, internet radio, and the internet, of course. And you have others like billboards, outdoor media, direct mail. And by the way, in Brazil, outdoor billboards have been banned. They're trying to decrease what they call the outdoor pollution. The outdoor pollution, where all the billboards, I guess the idea is that it takes away from the actual, it takes away from the landscape. It takes away from the actual environment. I'm not certain on that. I know I've been to countries that have absolutely stunning billboards, particularly those in Ghana and in Cote d'Ivoire. They have some of the most beautiful billboards that I've ever seen. In fact, Brazil, I took a picture in Brazil of a billboard, and they had this woman, and this billboard was about 3 stories high, and all she had was lingerie on. In the U.S., that would be considered a rather racy billboard and probably would get some complaints. But apparently they've decided to eliminate billboards altogether. Here we actually got up to date with these stats early on. And here they have some of the kind of the guidelines of media in different regions. We see Arab countries, Scandinavia, no advertising to children under age 12. PR. And typically PR is to give the face of the company that you are marketing. And obviously there are a number of different tools. I do want to show you a couple of things just very quickly. The Tylenol Murders, where someone tampered in 1982, someone tampered with Tylenol and they laced the capsules with cyanide. Now, and people died, and this is a negative thing, but what happened after that was a textbook case of how Tylenol repaired their image. And as you can see, this woman is taking all of the Tylenol capsules off the shelf. And in 1982, a 12-year-old girl started having symptoms. Some kind of symptoms that sound like she was coming down with the flu. They gave her 1 extra strength Tylenol capsule. Unbeknownst to them, was laced with a highly poisonous potassium cyanide. Mary was dead by 7 a.m. that next morning. And then there were others that followed. So what happened, and I remember it clearly, Tylenol took everything off the shelf. They admitted wrongdoing. They also claimed that they were going to correct the issue. But also what they did was they came up with new technology. They came up with a triple seal. Well, you press down, that's how you got it off. You had a vacuum seal around it, and then you had the safety tab. So you had 3 different layers of protection. And then when they relaunched it, they told everybody what they were doing. They put them back on the shelves, and then the sales took off as if nothing ever happened. But they actually got the consumer to believe that they had corrected the problem. They corrected the problem, and they showed step by step how they were doing it. It's a textbook case of showing what to do if you run into a PR problem. And so you can probably Google that and find out more information on it. Now, here's what not to do. This was Coca-Cola. They had a problem in Belgium where people were becoming overcome. 31 Belgian school children, some of who had to be hospitalized after drinking Coca-Cola. I also remember this case, and this was 1999. It turns out that there was a chemical on the bottom of the Coke cans, and this chemical was sprayed onto the wooden crates of where the Coca-Cola cans were put. And so when the school children lifted up the can of Coke to their nose, this chemical they inhaled and they fainted. And people associated the fainting with what was inside the can as opposed to what was on the can. But the point here was that the CEO at the time did not act immediately. It was only after this catastrophe had spread to other countries that they started taking action. And ultimately, that CEO ended up resigning as a result. And I can't remember the timeline, but I remember the CEO um, admitted complicity in not reacting quick enough, and then that CEO ended up stepping down or resigning or leaving not long after this happened. Okay, we're at the 1 hour mark, and I want to take the last 15 minutes that I have and go over a few things in chapter 14. I won't be able to go over it in great detail, but we will go through some of the information here. Price versus non-price promotions. I do have an article on that will give you some idea of these concepts. Non-price promotions. I think we know what price promotions are. I'll give you this coupon. I'll give you 25% off. Non-price promotions, sampling, of course. You go to a store, they have a sample for you. And that sampling pulls you through the decision-making process. What was that decision-making process? Awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, purchase. So you go all the way to trial, from not knowing or being aware to the product to trying the product or sampling the product. Kind of pulls you right through the decision-making process. You have different types of sampling. Tasting, dry sampling or taking packets at checkout. Pack swap, exchange of incomplete or almost empty packages of old goods for packs of an advertised product. Some companies will make that offer, even if it has to do with a competitor's product, and they will offer you something in exchange. Then they have others, cross promotion, gift cards, which we know very well, upselling, cross-selling. If you are a owner of a Honda car, they might want to sell you a Honda motorcycle or a Honda lawnmower because they know that you like the brand. And so they might try to offer you something else as a discount for staying within the brand. Okay, we understand consumer and trade promotions. So here are some of the issues with company headquarters involvement in sales promotions: cost complexity, global branding, transnational trade are four. And I would also say, when you're talking about company headquarters being involved, if you remember this, I showed a video in Global Business, those of you who had Global Business, of these scenarios where these corporate executives making all these mistakes overseas. And it's a classic case because sometimes headquarters don't understand the environment overseas. And so that might be another element. Besides cost, complexity, maybe culture goes under complexity because of the different cultural landscape. But these are all very, very big factors when you talk about promotion overseas. In countries with low levels of economic development, low incomes limit the range of promotional tools available. So you might use other types of advertising, mobile advertising, billboards are relatively, can be relatively cheap compared to other forms of media. If you're talking about television, if you're talking about other digital media, billboards can be a great alternative. And some billboards are very creative now. You have the electronic billboards that will change after certain intervals of time. Sampling again. You may be surprised, and I believe this was in an earlier chapter, that when you talk about the idea of door-to-door sales in America is no longer what it used to be, but door-to-door sales in some places, including Japan, is very common. In fact, People in Japan do not buy their cars at a dealership or the car lot. They rely on door-to-door salespersons to come and give them the information about the latest automobiles. So door-to-door sales in Japan is how you buy a car. And of course, we know if it's dealing with cars, the way to sample a car is to test drive and to get you into that car so that you can feel the car, you can smell the car, you can hear the stereo, all the other things that involve your senses is how you would increase the chance of that person buying that product, in this case a car. Point of use sampling, you go in a store, obviously they have some snacks out, you want to try the snack, they have a bag there of the snack that they're offering, you try it, you like it, you buy it instantly. Pull you right through the decision-making process, from not knowing to sampling to buying. Couponing, of course, we know about Groupon, we know all of these. You go to a site and here they have a box for coupon, and you're looking for a code. You're looking for a coupon code all online, and they have these sites that have these coupon codes. And that if you find the product you want to buy, you might be able to find a coupon code. You punch it in, you get a discount. I have done that on occasion. I'll go and look for a coupon code to get a discount, and it's effective. It's very effective. So you have on-pack coupons on the package for immediate redemption, and then you have impact that for your next one. You get a coupon, and then your next one you can use it at a later date. These are all interesting. They mention toothpaste, toothbrushes, and dental floss, and all of these things that you might have seen cross-advertised. In most of this is 70% of consumer promotion spending in the U.S. And the couponing is very big here. That goes without saying. 300 billion coupons distributed, but only 1% redeemed. That might be those free flowing inserts that you see in newspapers that I generally just throw away. Here we talk about Groupon again. Founders rejected Google's $6 billion takeover offer. Wow. I mean, you really have to be confident if you reject a $6 billion takeover for a company. I probably would have jumped at that and just kept it moving, do something else. But certainly social couponing is a big deal. Sales promotion, issues and problems, fraud, of course. And of course, there are ethical issues with promotion. And promotion is the one P that is most susceptible to ethical issues. Of course, product, you look at a product, you can kind of tell that, okay, something's wrong here. It's a knockoff, it's a fraud. Pricing is too high for the quality of the product that I'm getting. Okay, they can't fool you, but promotion, okay, there's some things that can be done that might get past you. There might be false advertising. And these are things that we often see. Then you have different regulations. In some places, you cannot use children, or you cannot use certain animals. You cannot use certain colors, certain numbers, certain symbols. In certain countries, the bird owl is considered an omen of bad luck, and it cannot be used in the country of Iran. It's considered the black cat of Iran. So you have these issues in terms of promotion. And it says here, going back, Islam frowns on gambling, so sweepstakes may not work. Personal selling, person-to-person communication, going into a store, somebody's trying to sell you an item. You know, these nowadays they kind of have a hands-off kind of approach. Let the person go and browse through the store, So you don't have this person-to-person hard selling. But person-to-person communication between a company and a prospective buyer is something that is becoming more prevalent because you are making a personal relationship. A lot of what you have in sales are based on relationship. So you have customer relationship marketing. So a lot of what you have now are based on relationships. Personal selling hurdles, political risk, regulatory hurdles, currency fluctuations, market unknowns. What are market unknowns? Lack of knowledge of market conditions, the accepted way of doing business, or positioning of the product may derail the sales team's efforts. And so you might have different expectations that you may not understand or that you might find unreasonable in terms of the customer's needs and wants. Different strategies. Here, the presentation plan for selling, the approach. You may have had this in your professional leadership development class in terms of sales. There is, we used to have a class called professional selling. I don't know if we still have it, but if you take advertising, you'll get this again. The approach is when you're going to a company and you're trying to develop a rapport and you're trying to lay out some basic facts so they can gain an interest. Then the presentation, then you come with all of the facts and the value proposition, then the demo, how this works, what the utility is, and what benefit that you get, that you derive from using this product. Then after you've made that convincing demonstration or demo, you negotiate. You negotiate on the price. You negotiate on other aspects that may not be related to price. It may be warranty. It may be other benefits. It may be service. It may be other types of benefits that are related to maintaining the customer satisfaction. Then after the negotiation, you close, you service the sale, you service the product as well. And so this is the flow of the sales flow that you get when you start talking about these sales cycles. And they actually go through these in on the slides. Then we have the customer relationship management that I talked about just a minute ago, one-to-one marketing. We're moving into an era of, instead of mass marketing, we're talking about specialized marketing or micro markets where you have each person, micro segment, is as an individual is a segment. So each person represents a segment. And you have direct versus mass marketing, direct mail, catalogs. And here you talk about years ago, the catalog was a selling tool. Now it's become an inspiration source. We know our customers love the tactile experience. Tactile meaning touch. Something that you can look at and you can look at the pictures and you get a lot of trade catalogs that come in for your business. Have you to buy equipment and merchandise that way. It still has some relevance, not what they used to be, and catalogs go out of date very, very quickly. Then you have the infomercials, which are very popular and entertaining. Interactive TV, sponsorships. So the sponsorships, a company pays a fee to be associated with an event. Okay, you're lending your, they're lending their platform and you pay to be a part of that platform. So it can be Super Bowl, Olympics, World Cup, what was that, big concert, all of these, Coachella, all of these big events that people want to be associated with. and obviously there's a big platform. And then, of course, product placement, having a movie and then seeing somebody in the movie using the Apple computer, using drinking a can of Coca-Cola or driving a certain car. That is product placement. Arranging to have a company's products and brands appear in TV shows, movies, and other types of entertainment. So that will do it. We're at the end of this session. This was the equivalent to a class period, an hour and 15 minutes. And hopefully you can spend a couple of days to get through this, and we have our exam on Thursday. And so this will be the last video that I will do. Hopefully you have enjoyed them. I have spent a lot of time putting them together, and yeah, it's pretty challenging, but hopefully you got something out of it. And I hope to next semester make them shorter, but it's very hard to do, especially when you're covering a couple of chapters. So Thursday we have our last exam, and hopefully you'll do well. And we'll round out the semester with your projects, the reverse globalization projects. And I'm very much looking forward to what you have. And so we will see these next week. They will be pre-recorded, and we'll watch them next Wednesday. And I believe our class time will be 12:30, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll be announcing that via Canvas. Okay, so I will see you this week. I'll see you tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and we will host Omar Goff of Procter & Gamble. Take care.